The whole King of Shaves story really came about many years ago now, in the last recession in the UK back in the early 90s, when I worked in marketing and advertising and essentially lost my job because client spend dried up. And I decided to do two things. Firstly, to be the master of my own destiny. So, you know, if it was going to go wrong or it was going to go right, I'd be in charge of it going wrong or going right. And then secondly, to make stuff and to make product. So something physically existed that you could sell. And you didn't necessarily have to be the advertising agency to work on the selling of it, but you had something to sell. And back in the early 90s, men's grooming was nothing like as evolved as it is now. So you'd have a shaving foam from a can, and you'd have a twin-bladed razor, and men's moisturiser wasn't really invented then, as wasn't the internet or Twitter or Facebook or anything like that. And I didn't like shaving, so when I shaved I used to get a razor burn and rash. I always used to wear a suit and a tie then, and I'd always be itching and fiddling with it. And used an oil, which has basically started off being the girlfriend's bath oil, which she used to keep her skin supple in the bath. And then realised that's quite gungy and gunky, and gunged up the twin-bladed razor. And then went and bought a book on aromatherapy from a little pharmacy actually in Henley-on-Thames, and learnt about essential oils and what sort of carrier oils you would use, whether they would be like a grapeseed oil, which is a good natural antioxidant, a sweet almond oil, jojoba oil. Experimented with those carrier oil with then essential oils in it to make it smell nice and for good skin properties. But it was a completely different product to a can of shaving foam or a shaving gel. I didn't get razor burn or rash, and that's how King of Shaves was born. A single SKU product, a single product, £2.99, designed the packaging at home, got it initially listed in Harrods, and then went up and down the M1, M6 motorway to see Boots, eventually got it listed in Boots, and then it developed its own little following. I mean, it's quite common sense really. I think people forget, you know, to use common sense when they're trying to get a sale. I mean, my view was, if I have a product called King of Shaves, I didn't have the money and the finances and the wherewithal right then to, let's say, if Boots had placed an order for, say, 10 products in 1,300 stores, it would have been a real challenge getting it made. But even I knew I could hand fill a few bottles of oil for Harrods if they chose to place an order. And it's the world's most famous department store. So my reasoning was, if I've got a unique product and it's called King of Shaves, I want the world's best store to sell it. I'd sent some of the early products to Prince Charles, just because I wanted him to have the first King of Shaves product. And there was a buyer there, a lady buyer, and I rang her up, went in and met her a number of times, but she, for some reason, wouldn't place an order. And it was only for a very small number. I mean, the Harrods weren't going to be selling thousands a week, so, you know, it would be in the dozens, if that. But she, for whatever reason, wouldn't place the order, and I was, you know, using up my money week after week, waiting to hear. And in the end, got a bit frustrated and tracked down Mohammed Al Fayed's office, got hold of his personal private fax number, rang up his PA, said, "I'm Mr. King, King of Shaves, got a product I'd love Harrods to list. I've got a presentation in with your buyer, but I don't seem to be getting anywhere. If I fax it over, maybe you'll get back to me if it interests you." And then I had a fax back the next day saying, "Yes, we'll like to list King of Shaves, here's an order for 12 bottles. And that was how we opened it. So it was a bit of, you know, investigation, had a product to sell, needed to have a retailer, and of course once you had one retailer like Harrods, I could then go to Boots and say, "Well, Harrods are listing it, I know it's going to be successful." Obviously I had no idea whether it was going to be successful or not, but I was using it every day. And then Boots came in on the back of that, and then Tesco, then Superdrug, and that's how it started. No, I mean, I think if I said, yeah, absolutely, it's going to be the sort of the black swan to Gillette's, you know, corporate size, and it's going to change everything, and we have done in a way in recent years. No, I mean, I just wanted to keep going, and I wanted to sell the products to people who I thought, you know, might benefit from shaving with a product that didn't give them razor burn. and it was, very much hand to mouth, keeping the business going, by hook or by crook, as much as you could do in the early days. And I think the brand only started to take on a challenger brand mentality probably when we bought Shave.com in '95, when we launched the first range of mass men's skincare in '96 at Boots, having launched a different sort of shaving gel called an Alpha Gel, which is in a tube and it was recyclable. And it was clear that other companies we were up against didn't have those sort of products, so we were carving out our niche. And I think it's very important for people watching the video is you've got to have a hook to hang your brand proposition on. So Innocent Smoothies was a fresh smoothie, not a smoothie made from there's some sort of concentrate or with some sort of preservatives in it. It's fresh. And where King & Shave's uniqueness came out, it was the shaving oil brand that then became the brand that was all about skincare and shaving at a time when men just shaved and accepted what they were being given to shave with. And then from the niche you could become a mass player, so move into first few hundreds sales a week, then thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands a week, and then you realise, okay, so there is a market in the gap here, and then it's now how big you can make that market. If you're always in growth, you're always going to have a bigger and bigger working capital requirement, and you've got to finance that. So our suppliers, we pay 60 days, some of the product takes 16 weeks to be made, we've then got to guess what we're going to be selling to retailers and what's going to come out of our range, what's going to be coming new into the range, and obviously you need people and systems to manage that, and mainly people. So you need to have people around you that have got common sense, but also a confidence of belief in the product and the brand to say, okay, we are going to make 10,000 of these, on the basis we're going to sell 15,000 and then 20,000, rather than sort of, well, I'm not making it until you've sold it. So there's got to be a mixture of there. And then in terms of the challenges, it's how do you overcome the lack of awareness of you. So it's a little easier now that you have, the internet, you have social media, you have word of mouth, replacing word of mouth there, so you can get the word out quicker. But also, whatever you're selling has got to be great. So there's no opportunity now just to sell average, because average doesn't sell anymore, because people can instantly say, oh, that's okay, that product I wouldn't buy it, I'd buy this or that. Yeah, I mean, I think opening overseas at the moment is a good time, because the pound's very weak against a basket of currencies, including dollar. And that means when you sell product, obviously you're benefiting from the sterling being relatively weak. However, you're selling into a new market, and that market, as English as it might look, i.e. America, isn't English at all really. It's got its own businesses and brands and people and success stories and failures there, and I think America, where we launched 10 years ago, it's been a really, really tough market to get to grips with. Retailers are much bigger, the buying decisions are much more protracted, they want to believe and know that you can scale up to supply product to suit their businesses. So like a Target store chain with 2,000 stores, Walmart 2,700, CVS Pharmacy 8,000. These are big stores that the buyer's got to say to the merchandising team, okay, we're launching this shaving oil, you've got to change your fixture to accommodate it, and then we've got to supply into it Pan America, and then you've got to communicate there. And I think in America it's massive, and you would think there would be like some sort of overarching way of communicating your brand to all of the people in all the different cities, and of course there isn't. It's 52 UKs, and each of the UK, whether it's California, whether it's New York, whether it's Ohio, Wisconsin, Massachusetts, wherever, they all have their own media, they all have their own TV stations, they all have their own radio. There's no massive overarching place you can go, and if there is, it's very, very, very expensive. And I think certainly the internet's helped break down those barriers via specific, shaving related blogs in our case, or areas that you can access freely and easily. But probably went there too early. We went there because an executive at Target had seen King of Shaves in Boots in the UK, loved the shave, liked the quirky packaging, rang us up, said, would you like to launch in Target? We thought, fine, yes, we're going to make a fortune. And within 2 years had blown up nearly £1 million in being in America, and had refinanced the bank loan we'd taken on, and it was tough. But we're there 10 years on. We've got some great things planned for America next year, 10 years down the track as such. But we've also built a very strong and worthwhile brand foundation there, where we're selling $6 or $7 million worth of product, which is a tiny amount of product sales, to people who enjoy our product. But now we need to sell 50 or 60 million. Gillette sell billions. The analogy I use is if you have a Ferrari and you keep the Ferrari in the garage, nobody ever sees you've got a Ferrari. But if you open the garage door and a few passers-by go by, they'll say, oh, there's a Ferrari in the garage. Fine. If you get the Ferrari out into the street and put some petrol in it, drive it around, people say, oh, Ferrari. And there's an awareness there. Where social media's worked and where Facebook's worked is it's built up communities that are converging in on one or two or three places. So Facebook over the last 4 years, Twitter over the last 3 years. Because they're both free to use, obviously you can choose to do Facebook advertising, you can do promoted tweets on Twitter or early bird or stuff like that, but it's essentially free, and therefore if you've got a good message or it's something worthwhile talking about, something interesting to say, and you've got people who like and engage with your product and will then retweet what you're saying or like your Facebook page or tell other people about it, because it doesn't have a cost, then I love it. But when you're out there trying to get a message across where the biggest competitor's lack of awareness, which is often the case for most businesses, it's not necessarily the competition in only a sandwich shop or a coffee shop or a tyre repair place or a new range of kids clothing, whatever, it's the fact people don't know about it. If you've got something clever, quirky, different to say, you can get people following you and build up a word of mouth buzz around it, then it can help you enormously. And it's different to say 5 or 6 years ago when everybody had an internet site and you'd expect people to go there. I'm now not so worried whether people go to shave.com or not anymore, because it's what we say. It's now about what people are saying about us, and that's how you facilitate that digital dialogue, that conversation. I think over the past 5-7 years there's been a huge amount of money spent on stuff to do with notionally helping business, which is layers of stuff which may or may not have had a beneficial effect. What business needs is it needs some sort of access to reasonable growth funding and financing on the basis the business is viable. So it needs almost a business bank that doesn't exist as such today. You have banking and you have different banks vying for the business, but there isn't a business acceleration bank. There are a lot of people out there, consultants. I'm not a big fan of consultants and people who just talk about what you should do or shouldn't do but don't do it themselves and take the money for doing it. And then there's, I think, a lot of people in the business, those sort of business advice areas who maybe talk a lot about doing stuff and aren't adding a whole lot of value. Now, I think the question is if those don't exist anymore, what's going to replace them that's of value to the UK small business guy, UK TI, developing exports, cutting through the red tape, how you take advantage of loans from banks, which, if you don't have any assets at all, how do you get money there? And I think the internet can become a massive repository of advice for people if it's set up in the right way, that there's a hub for people just to get whatever advice they need for their business wherever they are in the UK. And that doesn't exist yet, but there's no reason why you can't outsource that to a big business society sort of thing like Dave's doing into the bigger context of stuff, i.e. it's your problem, peoples, sort it out yourselves and come to us with the ideas. It'd probably be quite an empowering thing to do via the internet to do a similar sort of thing. And of course, if you're hosting it all online, and having a hub, and then you regionalise that hub, then you don't need to have the separate infrastructure pieces that are in there that have maybe been costing a lot of money.